right, Mr. Chip. This is going to be a lot of fun. Most people don't know this, but like me and you have been working together for the past year, so we've become actually pretty good as friends can come. Uh, Never actually meeting, even though you're actually just 5 or 6 hours down the road. We live in the same state of Tennessee, which is pretty cool. Um, but so I do appreciate you being here and taking time out of your day. I know you're busy and you're doing stuff. You got other things that you could be doing, so I appreciate you being here with me. So, for people listening or watching, however they're taking the information in, if you just want to give kind of a little, you know, brief background on yourself and where, kind of a little bit about you, and then transition that into you as an author, like why, with your background and the things you've done your whole life and stuff like that, like why did you want to transition into being an author? And in your case, we'll touch on this a little bit later. You wrote and published so many books in a really short period of time. So I would just love to know kind of the thought process behind that.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm 76 years old right now, and I really hadn't decided what to do when I grow up. So that explains a lot of my different careers. I, uh, I have a college degree in double major business and theology. I went to seminary in Princeton, um, and I've had a variety of careers since then. I've been headmaster of private school. I've been a consultant to private schools. I've run an advertising agency. I'm a licensed massage therapist and personal trainer. I work with physicians for spinal rehab. Um, I could go on. But the last decade, we started a center for women with eating disorders and PTSD. And that was really rewarding work. When I was about 40, I wrote one book, and it was a Christian historical fiction novel, and it was published by a Catholic uh, publishing company. The fun part about that was my editor was in France and lived in a convent. And so when I was talking about Mary in my book, they would send suggestions like, well, why don't you have the doors open automatically? And why don't you have some angels singing in the background when Mary shows up? So I had to write back and said, I'm sorry, but this Mary is Protestant and puts on her own pants. And they said, okay, we get it. So anyway, that was my first endeavor, and it was really rewarding. Well, obviously, from age 40 to when I started writing again at 72, um, I was busy with career and travel, and been married to Sue for 54 years and dated 4 years before that. So we've had a good long time of being together. So jumping forward, I've always been a really big history buff, particularly British history. And I've done a lot of genealogical research on our family and have found grandparents dating back to the 1100s and even some Roman emperors. So my imagination has been fueled by all of that. We've got some Templar Knights and, all kinds of fascinating stuff. So at 72, I thought, it's been a long time since I wrote a book, and I'm just going to start. And so I wrote Cranston Manor as my first novel. And it took, I don't use an outline. I don't have a plot sequence. It's all seat of the pants. I know there's some, when I got looking at software that showed about how to do your outline and sub-character development and all the rest of it, my mind just froze up. And, I said, it's in my head, let's just get it out there. So I went ahead and wrote that. It took me about 6 weeks. And I think it was, 350 pages long, something like that in print form, a 6x9 format. And I just loved it. So I thought, well, the question is anybody else going to love it? You know, because I didn't do it for the money. I did it because I thought it was fun. And so my wife would read it and she said, wow, this is a great book. And I thought, well, yeah, but you're my wife. So I printed up about 10 of them and I gave them out to some friends and they all said the same thing. Great book. And I thought, well, okay, but they're my friends. What am I what else are going to say? Man, this book sucks. So I realized that I needed to get an objective understanding of what my book was really like to people who didn't know me. So I thought, well, how am I going to get this published? And I looked at Amazon and I looked at some other choices, and then I found Draft to Digital. And Draft to Digital is cool because you download your text, etc., and then it automatically publishes all of the publishers: Amazon, Book, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, Kobe. There's about a dozen of them, and admittedly, Amazon is the biggest one, but it doesn't cost anything. I thought, well, I like that. It's free, and I don't have to start trying to do a publishing deal with all of these different outlets. And the way they make money is if your book sells, they take 10%, I think it is, of the royalty. So if a book sells for $3 on Amazon and you make $1.50 royalty, they take 15 cents. So, well, that's not crippling. And it did all the work for me. So I published that on Amazon, my first book, and I got a few reviews, and they were all 5 stars. I thought, well, maybe people like what I'm writing. So long story short, I sat down and in 2.5 years, I'm on novel number 20. And they're all relatively short. I mean, I would say in print form, 200, 250 pages, maybe. So anywhere from 60,000 to 80,000 words. And it just doesn't take me that long. I find the long term time spent is really editing and marketing and all of those things. Now, I use Pro Writing Aid to go comb through my books, and I do it more than once because, frankly, sometimes I run it through once and then I look back and I run it through again, and it found some things the second time around didn't find the first time. So I would say if it takes me 6 weeks to write a book, that's 2 or 3 hours a day, something like that. It probably takes as many hours getting the covers designed, because I designed all my own covers, until I met you, and you turned me on to 100 books. And I got one of those specials where it's $50 a cover. And so I sent my covers, some of them to them, and they said, yeah, we can improve this. And others, they said, we really like what you already did. So I've gotten about 8 covers now so far, redesigned from them, and they provide a good service. So that's been the process. And sometimes I take a month off and don't do anything, but the writing process is just, I often go back to a chapter and I said, how did I come up with that? Now that I've done that, what am I going to do next? Because I can't say this and I can't say that, because that's how that goes. The other big aid in my writing has been the internet. Since all of my novels are in a historical context from the Victorian era to today, all British, there are amazing things that you need to know to make it historically accurate. Like, when was the first telegram sent? So you can't say in Victorian era, well, the king sent a telegram to so and so and find out they didn't make them then. So that's helped speed up my process. And if it weren't for that, it would take me a whole lot longer to go ahead and review uh, and make sure my research was accurate. So I'll stop there. It was a long-winded answer to your question, but what else can I say for you?
Yeah, that was a great answer. I think that gave yeah, I liked what you did. You gave the background and you kind of naturally flowed into your writing journey. Kind of how it started back in your 40s and then took a break and then you continued that on after you retired, which I know you well enough. I don't know that you're actually really retired or if you'll ever really be retired. um, but yeah, I think that's really, really cool. And you're right. You made a good point in there, and we'll talk on this too. I think it's important for authors to understand and hear and maybe apply to themselves if they haven't thought this way before. When we crossed paths, about a year ago, just a little over now, and you'd mentioned like you were doing your own covers and stuff like that. And then after a little bit of time went by, I turned you on to 100 Covers, which is Matt Stone's company, and they provide great covers, in my opinion, at such an affordable price. They run deals very often, so like you've taken advantage of a lot of covers at like $50. Their ebook package. They have a couple, three different packages right now, I believe. But $50 for a professionally designed book cover that's gonna fit your genre, match your story, like that's really important. And then when it's not discounted, it's only $100, which maybe $100 to some people is a big deal. But if you're talking getting a cover that's going to set the tone for your authoring, especially if it's like your first book, for example, that's really important because your cover is your first impression. And after that first impression is made, like you can't go back and make another first impression. You can update your covers and stuff like that, which I guess is sort of like a second first impression, if that even makes sense. But yeah, like you're still in the process of going back and updating covers, and I've told you this before. You making your own covers, they weren't bad, they were good, but it's I'm always of mind of going out and finding people who like if this is the only thing they do, they're just focused on covers. So they're scouring the internet, they're looking at the market, they're checking out trends. They know exactly what fits on a cover for specific genres, in your case, historical fiction and stuff like that. So it's really, really important to know where you need to shift, make a change, reach out for extra help if you don't know or you're not sure, which you absolutely did with the book covers, which I think was a really good point. So I want to touch back on the the you're on your 20th novel in under 3 years, which is crazy in my opinion. I talk to a lot of authors who it's the slow roll, which is fine, like the 1 to 2 novels a year. And there are even some really, really, really big time authors who are just putting out a book or 2 a year. We can't all be James Patterson, which would be like 20 novels in 3 months, the way he writes. But the ability to go from publishing your first book to less than 3 years later, and now you're on your 20th one, I'm just curious how how is that journey for you or your process? Has it changed? Have you pretty much stuck the same way from the very first book to your 20th now? And then, what's your day look like when you're writing? You touched on it briefly and you say you'll like sometimes you'll take a month off and stuff like that. Um, but I know you well enough to where like you'll get in the zone and you'll be writing for several hours a day. So it's like you're able to knock a book out in 6 weeks. But do you have like an actual like concrete system that you use, or is it kind of like how you write with the seat of your pants, which by the way is my flavor of writing, so I understand that perfectly.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't changed much. I'm a big mystery writer fan as well. So mine are historical fiction, but they're mysteries. Um, and I would say all of them have a female lead. Um, so typically I would probably sit down in the morning and write for 2 or 3 hours. And that's about as long as I can sit in the chair. I guess if I were 20, but my knees get stiff, so I got to go out and do something else and mow grass or something. And then maybe later in the afternoon, 3 or 4, I might come in and put another hour in. And I would do that for maybe a week. And a week of that, I'm probably 2/3 of the way through. And then I leave it alone for a week because I want to let it settle. And then I go back and read what I've written so far. And I just look for gaps like, well, this character just doesn't seem to have much to say, but they're important. So I'll go back and add a paragraph or two here and there. And then I finish up. Before I started writing, I was reading about 300 books a year. And in the genre that I like, cozy mysteries, my books are clean and there's some element of faith in some of them, but so those books are, a 3-hour read. And because I read so many books, it helps me have a flavor of what I like and what I don't like. Too much description, not enough description. I'm not patient when they spend 3 pages describing the side of a barn. I mean, it's some people love that kind of detail. And I've gotten some reviews where they say, I'd like to have a little more detail. And I said, well, good luck. I'll take it under advisement. So that's pretty much the process. I think the characters need to be believable, and there's always some romance in my stories. Somebody's going to fall in love and get married or lose their husband at the most inopportune time. So that's pretty much describes the process for me.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty cool too to kind of have um the same process that you've kind of been working with for the past few years and it's worked. So it's like that old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Ain't, by the way, we're in the South here, so if you're not from the South, if you're from a different country, ain't is a normal word down here. So yeah, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So like you saw what was working in terms of being able to create these stories basically from your imagination and then take that, put it on a paper, flush out an entire book in a really short period of time, and then just repeat that process for the next one, and then do that, and then repeat the process for the next one. I think that's really cool. And it kind of, you know yourself well enough as an author that you don't need to try to go find, some new fancy strategy or new fancy system. Like, hey, if I can write 20 books in under 3 years and it's working for me and I can still stay on the schedule, like there's no need to go out and try to change things and make it complicated. It's pretty simple, right? And I talk about this all the time. Simplicity scales. So like if we're talking about scaling in the sense of writing and publishing more books, like the simpler the process that you can, one, it's going to be easier for you to stick to. The more complicated things get, the easier it is for you to fall off and not want to do it. So, and you do something I think's important for people to understand is it's not 365 days a year, 6 hours a day, head down on the keyboard. You never take a break. Like you allow yourself these mental breaks, whether it's you write in the morning and like you said, you go do something active because if you sit in your chair all day, you might not be able to get up. I'm the same way. I work in a closet. I'm on my computer all the time. So it's like I'll stand up and I'm like bent over, my knees are hurt and my back's hurt. And I'm only 32. So I can't imagine how I'm gonna feel at 76 or 77. So I think giving yourself those breaks, and then I also like the idea of letting it sit, kind of simmer the story that you have. Like you didn't finish it. If I understand this correctly, you didn't finish the book when you let it simmer. You got to get 2/3 of the way through it, and then you go back and make sure there's no gaps, and then that's where you'll finish the story out. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, you did. And actually, one of the things that I found out was that when I finished some of these books, in my view, they were finished, and I looked at them and they were only 110 pages long. And I thought, well, I've told the story I want to tell. Now what? And I thought, okay, part two. So I would think of a new scenario, which most people would call a series. And a couple of my books I've split into series because they were long enough. Like Cranston Manor was in 4 parts. And so I broke that into 2 books now. And of course, there's some filling in of gaps between book 1 and 2. So people that didn't read the first one, but they got to read the first one. I'm finding that out. But, well, anyway, another subject. So that's been another part of the process. I don't try and make the story that I originally start writing. I don't try and turn it into Tolstoy or whatever, because I've said what I wanted to say and I'm happy with it. And I realized, well, that's not quite long enough to be a justified novel. So then I think through about, well, what could happen to these people next? And so I've done that a lot. I think the other thing is, once you've got the story, I'll give you an example. I wrote a book called Double-Edged Sword, and I'm going to give away some of the plot, so that's the way it goes. But my initial idea was, it was World War II, and I thought, what if there were 2 girls? One was raised British and one was raised German. They were twins, separated at birth. And they suddenly meet in the middle of the war. What would that be like? That was the core of the idea. And for that idea, I just went with it. I told this British girl story and then the German girl story, and then they both find out that they're twins and they're at war with each other, and what goes on from there. So that's kind of typically, I get a germ of an idea and then say, well, I don't know where that's going to go, but that's where I'm going to start. I shouldn't probably admit this, but one of the disadvantages of writing so many books in such a short period of time without a written plot outline and stuff, a year later I go back and somebody says, well, what's this book about? And I'm going, let me flip through. Who are the characters again? What happened? Oh yeah. And sometimes I've actually gone back and read one of my books that I had written a year before, and I said, why did I come up with that idea? And that's just the way it goes for me. And I don't mind that. It would drive some people crazy. Like, you don't have every character memorized and what they did on Tuesday. I guess if I'd written 2 books, I would know all that. But with 20 of them, I can't retain that much. Maybe if I were 40 years younger, I could remember it all, but that's a true confession.
Yeah, which makes sense. 20 books. I mean, I don't know how you could remember everything. And for you, it's very different. It's not like, book 1 through book 20 is the same character just on a different journey, which would still even be hard to remember because it's like, well, where were they in book 12? Where were they in book 2 and stuff like that? What side characters got brought in on this book that weren't in this book? It's like you
Yeah.
have some that are now in a series, but then you also have a lot that are standalone. So we're talking different characters, different settings, different plots. So it's like, yeah, for somebody to expect you to remember all that, you'd have to have like an eidetic memory, which very few people do, by the way, and I am not one of them either.
I have hard copies. I printed like 5 of each of them. They're in my library up here. And so once in a while, I'll pull one out and say, oh, when was the last time I edited that? And I'll go back in and say, oh, I should probably change this. So with Draft to Digital, you can change the book every week and just hit republish, and it goes, the new version shows up. So I like that.
Yeah, tools like that are really, really important, I think, especially when it's free. You're not having to shell out tons of money a month just to get a service for a product, which there are products out there like that, but the fact that it's really resourceful and also doesn't kill your bank, I think is really cool. And I know lots of authors who use Drafted Digital. They're a big name in the industry, so that's probably not news to people.
Yeah. Well, another thing is I try and take time out for other hobbies. I didn't get in this to try and make a living. And I can't imagine the pressure that people go through when they say, I've got to make a living writing. Because it's tough. I mean, when your book's one of 3 million on Amazon and you're trying to get it up to number 10, it doesn't happen overnight. So it's easier for me to write because I don't feel the pressure of, well, what if somebody doesn't like this? Or what if I can't market this successfully? And that's not, I mean, that's just different. That's for me. And it makes it a whole lot easier, I will say. And I've got other hobbies. I mean, I'm a landscape painter. You can see one of my paintings above my desk. I do sculpting. I painted about 70 or 80 landscape paintings, and the house is now full of them. And I had to quit painting because there's no more wall space. So, I can take the luxury of saying, I'm going to go paint today or whatever. So it is a unique situation. So maybe it would be helpful for some authors to try and understand why we got connected. Would that be a good place to go?
Yeah, so and yeah, that's a good point, because this is, the whole goal of this summit is, or fiction marketing. So we're obviously talking about fiction books. So we got the nonfiction people out of here, and then we're focusing on marketing. So these sessions aren't going to be like how to outline your book, how to plot. Like, it's going to be your book. You've got let's just hypothetically, even if you don't have your book in hand, like let's say you're still working on it, but these are going to give you strategies and systems and stuff like that to be able to take with you when you get to that point. But for a lot of people, they're at the point of needing to market. And to me, market is split up into two different categories. That's growing your audience, so getting people to know that your book is out there and get them to know you as a person and know you as an author. And then the other half of that is making sales, right? But it's hard to do one without the other. Because
Yeah.
if you don't have an audience and you want to make sales, you're going to need to start running ads, but you're going to need to have enough books for that to make sense. But if you the long-term strategy, the way I think about things, especially with authoring, I look at authoring as a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm thinking not 6 months down the road. I'm thinking 3, 5, 10 years down the road. It doesn't mean it's going to take that long, but like I'm always thinking, what's the strategies and systems I can put into place that I know I can start to hone the craft in on now that will pay dividends later. So yeah, so the way me and you came across each other, excuse me, for people who don't know, is last year around this time actually, we linked up for the very first time on a call, and we were talking about how to make sure people knew that your books were out there and stuff like that. And we decided to focus on an email list, which I believe this is what I focus on solely now. I did some other things then, but now it's just email list and list building and marketing and stuff like that. So it's like the best way to get people into your world, get them connected with who you are, build that know, like, and trust factor, and give yourself any chance of being able to sell your book, whether that's you would just want to sell 10 copies, 100 copies. Maybe you're a little bit more audacious and you do want to make a living from your writing. I think an email list has to be in place for that to be the case, almost across the board every time. So yeah, so that's how we came into contact. And over the last year, me and you've been working together on getting people onto your list. And yeah, so if you want to throw some touch points in there and stuff like that, like where were you in terms of your audience when we first got together and kind of your knowledge of stuff like that? And then kind of how we grew together over the past year, and hopefully you saw some kind of benefit from it, and stuff like that. But yeah.
Sure. Well, my motivation partly was if I write all these books and nobody knows they're there, even if I don't sell any, if I could have 1,000 people read all of my books, that would be satisfying. It would also be nice to sell some of them. So I started looking at all these workshops that you see online, how to market your book. And there's all kinds of gurus out there that will go through a process and say, well, here's the 15 steps you need to do this one, do that, do this. And I thought, well, my time frame is not 10 years from now. Now, I may live to be 100, but I thought, if it takes me 10 years, I'll be 86, and who knows? So I came to this conclusion. All those workshops and seminars were great to listen to, and I printed out lots of pages and I looked at their advice and I said, you know what? There's only a certain amount of bandwidth that I've got, and I can spend that bandwidth doing writing, or I can spend the bandwidth trying to figure out all of these processes and do them on my own. And my simple conclusion was, I'm not willing to do it on my own. It was just too much. I could quit writing and try and figure it out. And I'm fairly tech savvy, but you know, all these acronyms, you need to be able to do this with that, and then you need to link this process to this website. It was just too much. So I had already done a website, and my son helped me with that. He's an IT guy and does SEO and all of that. So he helped me build a website on WordPress. But when I came to you, I said, well, I've got a website, but nobody's visiting it. So what's the point? So what I asked you was, it seems to me the most important thing I can do is build a mailing list, because I had nobody on a mailing list. And there were all kinds of people out there saying, well, this is how you build an email list. And they would say, do this. And then 15 pages later, I'm glazed over. And I said, well, okay. So I said, well, Philip, I know that's important to do, but I need somebody to do it for me and walk me, hold my hand through the process. And then when we're done, put it on a video so that if I want to do it myself, I can go back and look at a recording and say, oh, okay, that's how he did it. And so now I've got over 2,000 people on my mailing list working with you. And I've learned how to get a lot of reviews. And I'm at the stage now where you and I and Brian, I think, that are going to be working on Amazon ads, because you need to have enough decent reviews for somebody to, look at your book and say, oh, well, that seems to be, people like it, so maybe I'll buy it. So that's how we got here. And it's been great, because I have been able to continue writing, and I watched my mailing list grow, and we've shared a lot. I send you my reviews. I even got you to read maybe all of one of my books in your short time span. So anyway, it's been great, and that's what drew me to what you were doing. And if I had to do it over again, I'd do it exactly the same way. I think since we started in the last year, I've written 8 books. Now, I couldn't have done those and done what you've done with me. So that's how it worked for me.
Yeah, and it's I'll say that I say this on almost every time I'm talking to somebody, even if it's not the focus of conversation, is email list is absolutely crucial. And I've already touched on it a little bit in this talk, but like you just have to have one, because it's the only place where you're building these strong connections with these strangers that are, when they come into your world for the first time, they don't know who you are. They don't know how your story is. They don't know how you write, the style, the characters you build, and stuff like that. Where all that comes into play with having a reader magnet and all that stuff. And there are other talks on here where that's covered, so it kind of breaks it down into more detail. But like without an email list, in my opinion, and this is pretty widely accepted across the board with other authors, you know, or other people in the industry, is if you're talking ROI, so your return on investment, like if they other there's so many other pieces that have to be in place. Like you have to write a good book, your cover has to be good, your blurb has to be good. Like you mentioned, you have to have a good enough amount of reviews that are good quality reviews, not just like ratings, like actual written reviews, so people can kind of get a taste of like, oh, this person actually read this book, liked it, and explained why. Um, and then that's when an ads like Amazon ads or BookBub ads or even like Facebook ads for that matter can come into play. Um, but then you also need to have more than a couple of books out. You can start testing ads early enough, but you want to have enough books out because you want the read through, right? Because that's where you're going to see the best return on your investment. But you couple that up with your email list. So let's say you've got 2,000 people that you can, a book comes out, or let's say you've got a catalog of books like yourself, and you've got a book, maybe it's the sixth one you've written or something, or maybe it's even the first one you've written, and it's ready for people to go check out with putting Amazon ads to. So you can just drive traffic to that with ads and then utilize your email list as well to drive traffic to that Amazon page. And all that's going to do is put more eyes on your books. And without an email, social media is not the same thing, in my opinion, I don't think. And I know there are like social media experts out there in the authoring world, but I'm not a social media fan. I don't use social media often. It's just I don't see it as the best place to go if you're talking genuine relationships with your readers, building the know, like, and trust factor, developing relationships with these people. It's just there's no other place to do it. So I just think it's so important. And like you mentioned before, like you don't have to do it all yourself. Like if you don't know how to run ads or you don't want to run ads, go find somebody who knows what they're doing with a track record or that you trust, that you've been following for a while, and go have them help you. If you don't know how to build an email list, go find somebody who knows what they're doing and have them help you. Even if it's, when you go find editors, like some people opt out of a professional editor and they'll just really hyper focus on making sure they clean it up yourself. Like you could run it through Pro Writing Aid or tools like that. But if you're going to go find an editor, like go find a quality, reputable editor who knows what they're doing. Like there are things you can do your book cover. Like you don't have to do it all yourself. And something you mentioned, which is really, really important to kind of reiterate, is when you're getting help on all these different aspects, even if it's just one aspect, what's that do for you as the author? It frees up your time to write more. So like your ability to write 8 books in a year. That's so crazy. I keep telling myself I need to get back into writing, and then I talk to you and I feel even worse about myself because you've written 8 books in a year.
You're building a business at the same time.
Yeah, but
You have you have kids.
I could wake up earlier, right? But yeah, you're right. It gives you that ability to kind of focus on what most authors want to do, which is write. Most authors don't want to market their book or they don't know how to market their book. They want to just write the next story because that's what's fun for them. And that's really the foundation of their business. And then the marketing is what takes it to the next level. Um, but yeah, I couldn't be happier that we came across paths. I mean, we've developed a pretty, I think, great relationship together. I
Yeah,
still want to meet you in
absolutely.
person one of these days because you're not that far away. Um, but
Well, I
yeah,
tell
I think it's been
you,
awesome.
one of the most fun parts about building that emailing list was on my end of it, and that was you told me, well, you need to write newsletters. And I said, well, what's a newsletter? I used to do newsletters for schools, and that was pictures and here's what's going on in this part of this going on. I thought, what is a newsletter? And basically it was, write a short blurb about your book and why they would be interested in it and try and be personal. So uh, I found that to be a lot of fun. And it doesn't take me more than 10 minutes to just say, well, this girl, Lizzie, became a nanny at this British household and ends up being attacked by, and then I thought, no, I'm not going to tell you anymore, or I'll have to shoot you. In order you find out what happened to Lizzie, you got to get the book. And she's one of my favorite characters, etc., that kind of thing. And I've been able to do that for all 20 books, and sometimes two or three about the same book in different angles. Like one person asked, "Well, what's your writings genre?" So I wrote a pretty lengthy description of my genre, which is now on my Amazon author page. So when you go to Chip Smith Amazon author and you look at the author page, there's a bio on there, and it tells a little bit something we talked about, but it also answers the question, what's your genre? And it's pretty lengthy, and I think it lets people understand, even though my books are standalone and they're not following the same character for 10 books, they can trust that it's going to be like one of those descriptions that I give. Some of them are thrillers, but well, the one I gave you, that's based on our family history. And anyway, that's a fun part of the process, and it helps me engage, think about the book myself as an outsider. What would I want to know about somebody's book that I can write so they'll be intrigued? So that's been fun. You've helped me a lot with that. And I think it's a really worthwhile process.
Yeah, and writing emails too. So you're right. If people, I was the same way when I heard newsletter. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It's newsletter and email is the same word. They just use it interchangeably in the authoring world, or just really the online world for email in general. But yeah, it's like I had a conversation with Derek Depker. This has been a while now, but he was like, because I mentioned to him a while back, I'm like, I hate writing emails. It feels uncomfortable. Like I don't see the point of it. Like yada yada yada. I was being a Debbie Downer and whatnot. Um, which is funny now because now I love writing emails and it's my main focus of stuff. But it was like, if you, especially for fiction authors specifically, is the example he gave me. He's like, you're just honing your craft. Be a storyteller. Every email you write, you're just getting better, not only at writing emails, but just writing in general, because you're
Yeah.
getting used to the process of writing. You're getting used to how to best communicate and connect with your audience, which should just translate and then into them wanting to be with you and follow you and hopefully read your books down the road, and stuff like that. So it's a really, it's a multi beneficial, kind of aspect of your marketing as a whole, because it gives you more than just one. It's not just building your email list. It's making connections. It's refining your craft. It's getting better at storytelling. It's getting better at building a relationship with your ideal reader. It's getting better at knowing how to give the build, like, and trust factor to get people to want to not just come into your world, but stay, which is really important. So yeah, I think that I agree. I have a lot of fun too writing emails, whether it's for my book side or my business side. Like it's always a blast for me. You get to share things. I love sharing personal stories. Sometimes that ties back into my book, sometimes it doesn't. But I like kind of giving people an insight into who I am as a person, so they really know, like they really feel like they know me, even though the chances we ever meet in person are pretty slim to none, really. But yeah, it's just a really cool, fun place to kind of build your community, for lack of a better term. It's way better than trying to get followers on Instagram or on X, Twitter, whatever it's called, or social, or Instagram, or putting up reels on TikTok, like all this other stuff that I don't really see the same kind of benefits from. So yeah, I think it's really cool, and you made a good point that it helps you. It can be fun. It can be, there's a lot of benefits that come into play with that when, whether you're getting help from somebody or you're just doing it yourself. I think it provides benefits across the board.
Well, one of the neat things that I liked about your helping me build the list was uh, I found that writing a good email, not it, it's the retention of your readers. I mean, for example, you'd go on, I'd get say 500 new people in a month on my list. And what shows me that it's been effective is that maybe 1 or 2% of those people unsubscribe after 6 months. And I thought, well, I get emails unsolicited all the time. And I read them and go, how did I even get this? And I unsubscribe because there's so much junk out there. But the way you showed me how to get people to say, yeah, I like this. That sounds like a good story. And I want to see what else he's coming up with. And they stay on the list. Most of my people don't unsubscribe. So that's been encouraging that the process works.
Yeah, and I'll mention this too because funny enough, I have conversations with people that I'm close to in the industry, and some people will get kind of flustered, or even just other authors in general. They'll get flustered with if one person unsubscribes or if 20 people unsubscribe. Like I look at, and I used to be the same way. It's almost like when you get a bad review, it makes you feel kind of bad about yourself. But then it's like, then you have to remember you're not for everybody. Maybe that person got what they needed out of you. Nah, that sounds terrible. Maybe their journey with you came to an end at this specific point, whatever it was. It doesn't matter, it does whatever email you sent, that's the one they unsubscribe. Maybe they're just like they don't feel a need to continue on. That's fine. Um,
Sure.
but I always look at unsubscribes as a good thing because if they're willing to unsubscribe, that means they shouldn't be here in the first place. And if they stayed, they're not opening your emails. Which could land you in spam. It could land you in junk folders. It's going to hurt your deliverability, your click rates. If enough people are like that and they
Yeah.
should unsubscribe, but they're just like inactive and it just kind of messes up some things in the back end. So if I send an email out and it's rare that I send an email out on either side of my list that I don't get at least one person unsubscribe. And I'm like, and I'll go in and look sometimes and be like, I'm curious, like how long have they been with me? And sometimes it's crazy. It'll be like they've opened up 155 emails out of 160 with a great open rate, and then they just decided to leave. And then sometimes it'll be this was the first email they opened in 9 months, and their open rate was like 8%, and I probably should have cleaned it out before that. But yeah, unsubscribes. If people are listening or watching, or they have issues with unsubscribes in their own list, like it's not a bad thing. The only time I would say it's worrying or worth worrying about is if like every email you send, you're getting like some insane percentage of unsubscribes. That could be a number of reasons. That would, to me, would mean you didn't build your list with the right people. Like you didn't bring in, you know, historical fiction. You went too out. Maybe you accidentally grabbed 500 sci-fi and fantasy readers for some reason. Those people shouldn't be on your list. So every time you send an email, you might have 50 people unsubscribing every time. But typically it's very low. And you're right, your list, because I saw the back end of stuff, very rare people unsubscribe. And if they do, it's a handful. And it's the same with mine too. But if they do, it's not the end of the world. So just, don't freak out, people. It's not bad.
I think there are a couple of things that you hit on there and earlier that um, to get a bad review, if you get a bunch of bad reviews, that's discouraging. But like you say, what the reader is for, are they the right niche for your writing? I've got a book where I've got 11 5-star reviews and 1 3-star review. So I looked at the 3-star review naturally to figure out what did they have to say. And it was clear to me that they weren't really interested in the kind of book that I'm writing, because the criticisms that they made were all the things that the people that gave me 5-star reviews liked the most. So that really brings me to one other thing that I probably should have shared even at the beginning on my writing journey. And that is people get stymied by a fear of failure. You've written about it. I've written about it on Facebook and Amazon and other places before I was even writing, to encourage people to follow their dreams without a fear of failing. And I can write a book, and if everybody hates it, I don't care,
Mhm.
because it doesn't say anything about who I am as a person, my relationship to God, my family. The things that really matter are not tied up in the success of my business or my books or my paintings or anything else. And I know we both have the same outlook on that, but I would just say to anybody that's watching this who's struggling with writing and get writer's block, and well, what if I don't do this right? You got to let that go, because that's the biggest impediment to success in life. I've tried a dozen careers. I haven't mentioned a third of them. And I always went into it with the same attitude: was I've never done this before, but I can learn how to do it. And if I fail, well, so what? And that's been a real gift. So um, I just say that as an encouragement to people. They're listening to all this and thinking, well, I could never write because I got all blocked up. Uh, put that in the trash bin, because it's no help to anybody.
Yeah, and it's the same. And you're right. Me and you share a lot of the same views and stuff like that. And it's the same thing with your marketing. Like if it's going to be the first time you're ever trying to build a list or run ads or sell your book, like you can't expect it to just take off, because unless you're a unicorn, or the whole catching lightning in a bottle thing, like unless you're that person, which unfortunately, I'm sorry to break the news, you're probably not, because very few are, right? Um, like you can't expect to just have this home run right out of the gate. And if it doesn't work out, to me, the way I look at it is there is failing, but when I think of failing, that means it didn't work out and you quit. But there's learning. So like if something didn't work, you learn from it and adjusted. So you didn't really fail. You grew. Um, as long as you don't stop. And then, but even if you decide to stop, that's okay. Maybe you just got tired of trying and it just didn't work out. That's fine. Um, but you mentioned, going after your dreams, and the stuff, like topics like this are right up my alley. Like going after your dreams without fear of failure. Like that one's huge, but also you can look at it from a different way, is like pursuing your dreams or going after what you want, expecting to fail, but being prepared to push through and make adjustments. Because everybody who's ever been successful in anything, businesses, billionaires, you know, hedge fund managers, real estate guys, super successful authors, find me one person whose journey from start to where they are now was smooth sailing, because there's not a single human on earth that got from where they were to where they wanted to get to and beyond without something, and most of the time lots of things falling apart in the middle. But what separates those people from the rest is they didn't stop. And you never know how close you are to breaking through. You just have to keep pushing forward, right?
Yeah,
It's just,
absolutely.
yeah, because once you stop, then it's over.
I know that most authors are aware of this, but if you think of books like The Shack and Harry Potter and uh, Twilight series, those people I know in The Shack sent it out to 25 different publishers. No, 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 no. Same true with some of those other books I just mentioned. And as you say, what they did was they said, well, I'm going to try one more time. And those series and that book, The Shack, are multi-million sellers now. And if they just didn't give up, now obviously they were good books, but writing a good book doesn't mean you're going to go buy it all of a sudden. So yeah, I think sticking to it, and as you say, and unless you say, well, this isn't fun anymore, and I don't have to do this to survive. So maybe I'll try something new. That's completely fine. But even if you fail at things that you like doing, there's a difference between it not working versus your self-worth. What does God think of you? Your book didn't sell. Oh, my son, you're such a tragic failure. I don't think I'll ever talk to you again. It doesn't work like that, but people seem to think it does sometimes.
Yeah, you know, and I've had this conversations with other people on this summit, and it's like you have to look at yourself. You have to do like a self reflection on you. Is like your goal, Chip's goal isn't going to be Philip's goal, and Philip's goal isn't going to be Brian's goal. Like if you're the author, it's the goals and what you want to achieve and stuff like that is subjective to you. So don't compare yourselves to all these people, or
Yeah.
especially, you know, if you're starting out, and you're like, I'm not J.K. Rowling. I can't. I don't want to do this anymore. It's like, okay, well, if you listen to her story of when she first started writing the Harry Potter books, and where she was writing, and like where her life was in just like not the ideal situation when she started writing these books, and look at those books now. Could you imagine being the guy at the publishing company that told her no to Harry Potter? Like as soon as those books got published, that guy was fired. Like, and he's never getting hired again anywhere else. But you're
As they
right. You
say,
mentioned something that was like, I'm gonna try one more time. That doesn't mean I'm gonna try this one last time. I'm gonna try this one more time. And if you don't work out and you want to move around and do something else, that's okay. That doesn't mean, you know,
as
it's
they say
fine.
in England, um, you've been made redundant. That's when they're fired. I was over in England for 6 or 8 weeks, and everybody talked about, well, this guy just was made redundant, and I thought, what are you talking about? And it just means you lost your job. So with Harry Potter, the guy that didn't publish her books has been made redundant probably several times.
Forever.
Forever. Yeah, that's right. Try a
And
new career, buddy.
yeah, this lifetime and the rest of them. Yeah, he's never. Yeah, he's screwed. Okay, yeah, I think that's a good place to stop.
Okay.
So is there anything else that you want to mention or touch on before I let you go? Hang out with Sue, maybe mow the yard. I don't know what you're gonna do with the rest of your day, but
Uh, Already
uh,
mowed the lawn
oh,
today.
okay, yeah. So anything else you want to touch on or mention that we didn't touch on before, and then
No, I just say thank you for being patient with an old codger who didn't want to have to do everything. You did the heavy lifting.
yeah, well, it's been fun. You said you do it again, I do it again too.
Okay.
So
Well,
yeah,
thanks.
I appreciate you being here. So real quick, and I'll put these links at the bottom of the page too. If you just want to tell people where to go check you out, if they want to read your books or see what you're doing, I know you have a website, and then also I'm gonna put your Amazon profile down at the bottom of this video too, and then um, maybe like a reader magnet they can go grab. They can also do that on your website. But what's your website if people want to go check you out?
It's mymysterynovels.com, all lowercase. And that's the website. And then Amazon is my author profile. And you got a link to that. I don't remember what it is. But when you click on that, it shows all my books. Except I found out yesterday that 5 of my books, they disappeared somehow. So I
Uh-oh.
called them and they said, oh yeah, we messed up. So in the next 3 to 5 days, you'll have all of them there again. So, but anyway, you'll see the book and the description, and I don't think any of them cost more than $3. So it's not like a major investment to buy one.
Yeah, that's right. No, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So we'll put all that here under the video so people can go check you out if they want to. But yeah, like I said, thanks for being here, Chip. I appreciate you taking the
Okay,
time. This was
you bet.
fun. Hopefully people learned something, saw some new insights, got the kind of view from an author being able to write and publish all these books in such a short period of time. It's not impossible. I don't know if I could do it. Doesn't mean you can't do it. If you got the time and you've got the wherewithal and the willpower and stuff like that, it's absolutely you can absolutely do it. So I appreciate your time. Hopefully everybody learned something, whether you're watching or listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. See ya.